So look, the guy's an Australian icon. We need more of him. I don't know if you'll ever replace him, and we can only hope he hangs around for many, many years to come. But here he is, the one and only Larry Pickering.
Geez, I could listen to that bugger all day. Well, the biggest problem I get when I talk about things that people hate is when I talk about Christianity. And I got a view on every bloody thing, that's my problem. But they never call me a Christianophobe. But the moment I say something about Islam, I'm an Islamophobe. I can't figure it out. But I've got nothing against anyone. Fair dinkum, I don't have. I walk up the high street here in the Gold Coast, I walk up any high street in any city in Australia, you smell the Chinese shit, you smell the Vietnam shit, you smell the bloody Chinese stuff, the Indian, all that food, all that culture. That's what Australia's about. It's that culture that built Australia. That's why we love it. That's why we don't want it ruined. Yeah. But of all those restaurants and all that multicultural, beautiful stuff we have in our cities, you rarely find a Muslim restaurant. You just don't find one. There may be an occasional Lebanese restaurant, but they're half Christian anyway. But they just don't seem to fit in. I mean, we welcome them to integrate with us. Yeah. But we don't want us to have to integrate with them. Yeah. This is our country. Yeah. We love it. We want to keep it the way it is. Is that too much to ask? No. I had some silly poofter ask me a minute ago. He was from the bloody Channel 9. He said to me, do you think it's fair that people should be walking around with Australian flags over their shoulders? That's pretty divisive, isn't it? I said, what do they do at the damned Olympics? So the bloody interview didn't last long. But anyway, what's been said here today is what's been pretty well covered and pretty well what everyone feels. It's wrong what's happening. I think it's terrible. I think it's disgusting. I think that they have separated themselves, and all the time we want to include them with us, but they don't accept that. I don't dislike Muslims. I just wish they'd leave their shit back at home.
Let's go back.
Their laws, what they do, I mean, it doesn't fit in here. It does not fit in. And, you know, Abbott and people like this, our Prime Minister, I'm thoroughly disappointed with him. Because where does he go to seek all this togetherness and stuff? No, he goes to the Grand Bloody Muftis. But it's the Grand Bloody Muftis that are in charge of Sharia law. They're the legal representatives that determine the way Sharia law will be interpreted. So if I want to marry a 9-year-old, I go and see this bugger. What the hell's Tony Abbott doing talking to him? He will not find anyone at the top that will solve the Islamic problem. Because 25,000 of people of all the Muslim community here are radical. 25,000. There are only 400 of them that are under police surveillance. And of all the atrocities that have been committed lately, not one of them was under surveillance. So how many are left out there working against us? We will not solve this by going to the top. The top is where it starts. But pretty well, everything that's been said here today by the brilliant speakers before me is true. And I think it's something that you people have come together to be concerned about. And I hope you continue, because I'm going to continue. and I'm going to keep going. And if I get knocked off, it's a small price to pay. It's a small price to pay. So I know you're with me, fellas, and I'm with you. And if we stay together, we will win. We will win this. We'll win it because we have to win it. There is no choice. I got 2 small kids too. That's what I care about. I don't care about me. I can give a stuff. They want to stand there and shoot me. That's fine by me. But I worry about my kids. That's what I worry about. And you worry about your kids. And a lot of you worry about your grandkids. And that's what's important, because that's what's going to be the future of this country. And it's been a great country. I love it. I love it with a passion beyond compare. And I know all you do too. But look, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to finish with a little story for you. It's about how you can solve a problem that seems insurmountable at the time. And I'm going to take you back to when I was 10. I was a schoolboy. I was the only schoolboys union representative. I was the president of the schoolboys union. So every teacher hated me with a passion. I got naught for everything, including art. So we had an English teacher called, we called him Bubba Powell. He was sort of like a little mini Rudd, you know. He had silver hair and he potchy and, you know, he's a very unlikable sort of bloke. But anyway, he was always looking to have a go at me. So we're sitting in English class there one day, and he said to a whole class, he said, I want you to go home tonight, and all of you boys have got to learn two verses from the poem called The Man from Snowy River. And as I was walking in, he said, oh, Pickering, you only need one. You only need to learn one. I said, why, sir? He said, because you're not as smart as the rest of them. I said, okay, you little bastard. So on the way home from school that night, I bought the book, The Poems of Banjo Patterson. And I sat down and I opened the book at this poem called The Man from Snowy River, and I thought, shit, how am I going to learn all that? Because I was determined to learn it all in the one night. So anyway, I tried. And I sat up all night, never slept. I went to my paper round in the morning with a torch in my mouth and the book on the handlebars. I learned it. And by the time I got to school the next morning, I'd learned all but the last verse, and I kept getting verses transposed. So anyway, I missed science period that morning and finished up getting into English class, confident that I knew the lot. I was going to get this little bugger. He was never going to embarrass me like that again. So anyway, I was about the third up. I got up, and he said, what verse did you learn, Pickering? I said, the first, sir, the first verse. So there I went. I started, and I was determined that this bloke would not stop me until I'd finished. And it started like this, and I was concentrating on a photo of the back of the class of the Queen. And she had a sash with a red splotch here, and that's all I concentrated on. And it started off, there was movement at the station, for the word had passed around that the colt from Old Regret had got away. And it joined the wild bush horses. He was worth 1,000 pounds. So all the cracks had gathered to the fray. All the tried and noted riders from stations near and far had mustered at the homestead overnight. For the bushmen love hard riding where the wild bush horses are, and the stock horse snuffs the battle with delight. There was Harrison, who won his pile when Pardon won the cup, the old man with his hair as white as snow. But few could ride beside him when his blood was fairly up. He would go wherever horse and man could go. And Clancy of the Overflow came down to lend a hand. No better horseman ever held the reins. For never yet was rider who could keep the mob in sight if once they gained the shoulder of those plains. And Harrison, and Harrison, I thought I remembered it. and one was there a stripling, on a small and weedy beast. He was something like a racehorse, undersized, with a touch of team or pony, 3 parts thoroughbred at least, and such as are by mountain horsemen prized. But still so slight and weedy, one would doubt his power to stay, and the old man said, "That horse will never do. For long and tiring riding, lad, you'd better stay at home. There's no such place for such as you." So he waited, sad and wistful. Only Clancy stood his friend. "I think we ought to let him come," he said. "I warrant he'll be with us when he's needed in the end, for both his horse and he are mountain bred. He hails from Snowy River, up by Kosciuszko's side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, and the horse's hoofs strike firelight from the flint stones every stride. The man that holds his own is good enough." So they went. By this time, I could see Bubba Powell shifting in his seat, but there's no way he was going to stop him. So they went. They found the horses by the big mimosa plains. They raced away toward the mountain's brow, and the old man gave his orders. "Boys, go at them for the jump. No use to try for fancy riding now. And Clancy, you must wheel them. Ride boldly, lad, and never fear the spills. For never yet was rider who could keep that mob in sight if once they gained the shelter of those hills." So Clancy rode to wheel them. He was racing on the wing, where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he raced his stock horse past them, and he made the rangers ring with a stock whip as he met them face to face. Then they halted for a moment while he swung the dreaded lash. But they saw their well-loved mountain full in view, and they raced beneath the stock whip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off into the mountain scrub they flew. Then fast the horsemen followed, where the gorges, deep and black, resounded to the thunder of their tread. And the stock whip woke the echoes, and they fiercely answered back from the cliffs and crags that beetled overhead, and upward, ever upward. The wild horses held their way where the mountain ash and Currajong grew wide. And the old man muttered fiercely, "We may bid that mob good day. There's no man can hold them down the other side." When they reached the mountain summit, even Clancy took a pull. It well might make the boldest hold their breath, for the wild hop scrub grew thickly, and the hidden ground was full of wombat holes, and any slip was death. But the man from Snowy River, he let his pony have its head, and he swung his stock whip round, and he gave a cheer, and he raced them down the mountain like a torrent down its bed, while the others stood and watched in very fear. He sent the flintstones flying, but the pony kept his feet. He cleared the fallen timber in his stride, but the man from Snowy River never shifted in his seat. It was grand to see that mountain horseman ride. Through the stringy barks and saplings on the rough and broken ground, down the hillside at a racing pace he went, and he never drew the bridle till he landed, safe and sound, at the bottom of that terrible descent. He was right among the horses as they climbed the farther hill, and the watchers on the mountain standing mute saw him ply the stock whip fiercely. He was right among them still as he raced across the clearing in pursuit. Then they lost him for a moment, where 2 mountain gullies met in the ranges. But a final glimpse reveals, on a dim and distant hillside, the wild horses racing yet, with a man from Snowy River at their heels. He ran them single-handed till their sides were white with foam. He followed like a bloodhound on their track, till they halted, cowed and beaten. Then he turned their heads for home, and alone and unassisted brought them back. But his hardy mountain pony, he could scarcely lift a trot. He was blood from hip to shoulder from the spur. But his pluck was still undaunted, and his courage fiery hot, for never yet was a mountain horse a cur. And down around the overflow, the reed beds sweep and sway. And up by Kosciuszko, where the pine-clad ridges raise their torn and rugged battlements on high, where the air is clear as crystal and the night stars fairly blaze at midnight in the cold and frosty sky. And down around the overflow, the reed beds sweep and sway to the breezes and the rolling plains away. The man from Snowy River is a household word today, and the stockmen tell the story of his ride. Well, 6 weeks later in the playground, 6 weeks later in the playground, Brother Tell came up to me and he said, shaking, "You knew that poem all along, didn't you?" I just smiled and walked away. He was suffering enough. But fellas, thanks for coming today. You've got no idea how much it's meant to each and every single person here that everyone else has come. It's brilliant. It's right across Australia. It means so much. And when people call you a racist, wear it with pride. Because that means you've won. That means you've won. And eventually, fellas, we will win. Thank you very much.